You too?
Yeah. I gotta think. Whole new week to go. All right. Welcome to Talking Shop. Before we get going, take a moment, subscribe, hit that little bell button, and then you get the new videos when they come up. It's just Matt and I. Ernie has been sick, or so he says. We're not really sure. We'll see next week. But we have a great text, a parable. The parable of the 10 virgins, Matthew 25, 1 through 12. No, 13.
13. I want to say 12 too, but it's 13.
And I think we'll be actually doing the next few are all in Matthew 25.
We're all in 25.
So this is that end of the church year time. It's focusing us on the return of Christ, preparing us for the season of Advent, which is crazy that it's already upon us. But a lot to come, so let's get after it.
Away, spit on my Lord in every way, yet I'm still welcome in the arms.
All right, so Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. The kingdom of heaven will be like what?
And been knocked down, called God a liar.
I'm sorry, I'm playing Ernie there for a moment.
Yeah, I'm still
No, it's funny that all of the we were talking about this before, but not this particular part. All of the other the kingdom parables in Matthew chapter 13 are the kingdom of heaven is like, and this one is a future
Passive.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's not that this is how it is right now. This is
What it will
this
be.
is what it will be like, and which is fair, especially when we get down into the rest of chapter 25, and he starts talking about the last judgment and all of those kinds of things. So, but it'll be like these 10 ladies, Parthenos, so virgins in the Greek, who are waiting for a bridegroom, and evidently there's a tradition that when you're waiting for the bridegroom, you have lamps. We're assuming that because that's the context of the parable.
And let's be honest, I don't think you have to really have a deep understanding of wedding practices like that's not the point.
It might be helpful. I mean, you might be able to
Go ahead.
Can we start over?
No,
Can we?
there's
No.
restarting. We just keep pushing on.
All right. That it might be helpful. You might find some witty sermon in that, but the reality is that no commentary that I've found has taken on that subject.
Sure.
So we can get there without it.
Yeah, and we shouldn't get hung up to. I mean, I don't know why people would do this, but like the whole why is it virgins? These are just young ladies.
Yeah.
Right. They're of marriageable age, not yet married.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
And they take their lamps and they go out to meet the bridegroom for whatever reason. It's kind of this image of they kind of process in with the bridegroom into the wedding feast.
Yeah.
Is the image that is being painted here. So they go out there waiting for him along the road or whatever.
Yep.
And we learn that they are not all the same.
Yeah, this is the important key.
Yeah.
That 5 of them, half of them, are, here's your fun Greek for the day, morons.
That's right.
Foolish, and the others are wise. So we're split down the middle.
And the difference between the foolish and the wise is, according to this, is simply that the wise brought extra oil.
Extra oil. Yeah, they have a flask of oil. So we're assuming they all have oil in their lamps.
Yep.
And the ones that are wise have an extra container of oil along with their lamps.
Right.
So, yes.
And so as they're out there waiting for the bridegroom to show up, he's taking a long time. He's delayed. They're waiting. He's delayed. I mean, you can see this. This is the imagery of the church. Mm-hmm. We're waiting, and he seems very delayed.
He seems delayed. And,
right?
and that will, as the disciples will discover later on, if you read into what is in Matthew 20, it's not in 26, it's 27. No, it is in 26. as Jesus is delayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. They'll fall asleep. They get tired
Yeah.
and they fall asleep.
Like maybe we've heard this before,
Right?
right?
Yeah, maybe this is coming to us.
So yeah, he's delayed, and they become drowsy. They fall asleep. It is important to note, it's not like the wise stay awake and the foolish fall asleep. They all fall asleep.
Yeah, it's not the difference between the wise and the foolish is not those who are able to stay
alert,
awake
ready to
and
go,
those who are not. That's not the wise and the foolish.
And then they all fall asleep, and then the cry comes out. This is that startling cry of the coming of the Son of Man. I mean, this is it, right? Here is the bridegroom. Come out and meet him, right? Finally, he showed up. He's there. They get up. They trim their lamps, which, let's be honest, nobody trims a lamp anymore.
Not anymore. Maybe you have oil lamps in your sanctuary, and they need trimming. But with even the wicks that we have these days, they don't really need it.
I know it.
So those go on forever.
So it's getting it all put in order.
Yep.
Right. And immediately they do that, and those who don't have enough oil realize that their lamps are starting to go out. Right. And so they ask the other 5, give us some of yours. What's the problem with that?
Well, the wise ones say that there will not by no means. There are 3 negatives, and Greek can do that before this. There will not be sufficient oil for you and for us.
Right.
And it's pretty emphatic that there will not be enough for both if they share.
Right, if they share. Right. So there's not enough, so go find those that deal in oil and buy some more for yourself. And you already see where this is all going. As they're out, they're buying more oil.
Yep.
The bridegroom does indeed show up. And the now 5 virgins go with him into the marriage feast. The door is shut, and the foolish arrive too late. The door's closed, right? And they knock on it, and they say, Lord, Lord, open to us. And this is the brutal kind of statement at the end is what?
I'm not sure who you are. Actually, it's I do not know you, which is a very biblical statement. You get it in several of Jesus' parables.
Sure.
To those who are acting foolish, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
I do not know you.
I do not know you. And then, so verse 13 carries the parable into the life of the hearer of it. So it's kind of like Jesus tells this parable, and then he sort of looks to his disciples, or looks to our hearers today of this parable, and says, watch therefore, for you do not know the day nor the hour.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know when this is coming.
And we get that, in essence, that is the explanation of the parable.
Yeah. And so...
There you go. We're all done.
So he doesn't break down a description. He doesn't decode all the elements in the parable.
Right.
He just holds it together as a whole story and says, so be watchful, because you don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That allows, what we were talking earlier, for a lot of ways in which maybe we can approach preaching this. Like, I think that needs to be the thrust of what it is, because that's what Jesus says it is. Right. But the imagery can allow for a lot of creativity. It can also allow for some dangers. Like, we can get pulled into trying to say, well, this is exactly who the wise are and the foolish are. This is exactly, like, if we get too specific, we're reading things into the parable that aren't necessarily there.
Yeah.
But there is a richness in the story of being able to say, you know, what is the oil? It's kind of the first biggest question we were talking about. Is the oil the good news of Jesus Christ? Is it the gospel?
Right.
Is the oil the gifts, the word and sacrament in our lives? Is the oil the election of God? Is it all of that?
Yeah.
Is it okay just kind of pick one and say, yeah, it's this and those things, right? So it's kind of a broad thing we can.
Yeah. When
discuss.
I was looking at this, you have to ask the question. Obviously, even though he doesn't say, and he told this parable based on the format and structure that we have of Matthew, we can say he's telling a parable.
Yeah.
Which means none of this becomes literal. All of it becomes figurative. Yeah. But as I remember Dr. Gibbs saying about the woman cleaning her house, right? You can run the danger if you start asking, well, what's the broom?
Yeah, exactly
right. The broom is simply there because she swept her house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so it's the actions that are important. But things like lamp, things like light, things like oil, there is a rich biblical heritage
Imagery, yeah.
of that. And so you can go back and you can start pulling some of those out of the Psalms, some out of the prophets, and start reading into what do those stand for? What are some of the realities that
and
God
so I
brings
think,
us in those?
and that you would see those in light of then the call to be ready.
Yeah.
That's what. So these other images are being pulled into this context here.
Right.
So we, for instance, you could have the conversation with this. We were kind of playing with the idea of, is it that they were, that these foolish ones were so concerned about looking the part or having the oil.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it never says in here that the bridegroom wouldn't let them in without the oil.
Correct.
But they were consumed with having it right, sort of building themselves up.
Yeah.
Right? And you'll have hearers in your congregations that struggle with this.
Yep.
Am I looking the part, have
Yeah.
the right stuff?
Am I worthy?
Am I worthy?
Right.
And I need to take care of what I need to take care of to make sure I'm worthy
Yeah.
enough.
And too late, and if you want to run that direction with it, too late, if that's what you're always consumed with, then you have to find those places to make you worthy. So you go to those who you believe are worthy, and you ask them to make you worthy.
You make me worthy.
And
They're
when-
saying we can't do that.
And when they say, rightly so, we can't make you worthy, you need to go find then they go out hunting in the marketplace of ideas, you might say,
Yeah.
to try to make themselves worthy, and
right.
realize then that's a problem. Yeah, because and this is where you can kind of you can play with what's not there in the parable.
Yeah, I think so.
It never says that they have to have burning lamps
That's right.
to go in.
Yeah.
They just assume that, and that's their problem.
And so you can do that. You also have sort of the kind of the more classic that if the oil is the gospel, the good news, and the call is to be ready, to where the foolish then they're not ready and they're trying to go out and find it somewhere else. The wise are simply to be ready is to be in a place where you're receiving these gifts.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, so when you're preaching to your hearers, you can actually tell them this is what being ready looks like.
Yeah.
You may still fall asleep before he comes, but when he's announced, you're ready. You got oil. Why? Because you're here. And we talked a bit about those people who will call up the pastor and they're like struggling, and these are people that have they've neglected to ever care about any oil.
Yeah, they haven't been. We're here going with the oil as those things that you receive within the body, the Church of Christ, so they're. I would say in that context, if you're going to preach that, then the foolish are those who go, well, I go to church once a year.
Yeah, I got it.
I've cracked my Bible.
Yeah.
I went to Sunday school.
I believe in
and
Jesus.
so
It's fine.
they believe what they have is enough.
Plenty. Right.
Whereas the wise believe you can never have enough of those things to be prepared.
Yeah. And so they're always attending to those gifts.
Yep.
And so, I mean, that's just a variation. I mean, I think your context will maybe dictate how you do it. I mean, shoot, these days with our political climate, you could do those who think they got the right oil, or they need to buy the right oil, or they need to make themselves worthy by by backing certain candidates or having certain elections go their way, and
Yep.
it's like, no, you'll all fall asleep.
Yeah. Well, and again, the remembrance is, where's the focus here? The focus is that we are waiting for the bridegroom
Yes.
to come.
Yes.
And if you take your eyes off of that,
Yes.
and if you start to forget that that's why we're here and that's why we're making these preparations, that's why
That's
we're
right.
going
Very
to church,
good.
that's why we're doing all of these things, is because we're waiting for the bridegroom to come. We run the danger of missing out, right?
Man, yeah.
So
That's good.
yeah.
So I mean, that's some good. I think it's challenging. The next few weeks will all be about these sort of being ready, what the kingdom of heaven will be like as it comes.
yeah.
And so it's challenging, and it's a good thing to remind our hearers about what it looks like to be ready. And this doesn't have to do necessarily with their efforts of what they found in the marketplace, but what they have received from our Lord, who welcomes them into that feast.
Right.
So, yeah, check out craftofpreaching.com. There'll be a good article there for sure about it. And continue to share us with your friends and colleagues. Leave any comments. Wish Ernie all the best. Hopefully he'll be back next week. It's not COVID.
It's not
He's
COVID.
Fine. But God bless your preaching. We'll see you next week.